Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Sneakerheads. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and over to my side is my lovely co-host every Monday, and we get together on Friday over on his channel, Rob Shue. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing all right, Jack. I tweeted it out earlier. I have a little bit of ongoing motion sickness. I've been refreshing Twitter just constantly, and I think my eyes have not gotten used to the flipping up and down. But other than a lack of news that I want to hear, I'm not terribly disappointed with the day. So I think I'm doing well overall, Jack.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I am right now too. It's been an interesting day so far. I titled this as the 49ers have been pretty much sitting on their hands. We haven't heard anything so far from the 49ers. And at this point, it kind of seems like just a normal 49ers beginning of free agency. They don't usually do a whole lot at the beginning, and then they start to bounce usually around the day 2 or 3. And so far, so that's kind of what it seems like. I know that we've seen them out there, interested in a lot of these guys, but they just haven't struck yet.
Right. And honestly, when you look at a lot of these deals going out, there can be a little sigh of relief in some of them that the 49ers aren't involved. I mean, this day one frenzy is often categorized by a bunch of deals where guys are getting overpaid. And a lot of the numbers that get reported are the high end of contracts. So it's not until you really dig in and get the true numbers of the deal, find out the guaranteed money where you really understand the contract. But in looking at some of these total dollar figures that have gone out, it's not really a contract out there where I think to myself, oh, that's one I wish the 49ers had on their books.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And, let's get into some of what we've seen go on today real quick. Luke says, Jack and Rob, happy legal tampering day. Happy legal tampering day to you as well, Luke.
Cheers, Luke.
Yes. And then Abel says, what's up, gents? Hey, just time to talk some 49er football and get this thing rolling. And then Adrian is always in the house, and he says, what's up, Jack? Howdy, everyone. And hello to Rob as well. So, Adrian, good to have you. So let's jump into it. The day started off bright and early this morning with some news for 49er fans right after the tampering period started, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are out on Jimmy Garoppolo. They went the Mitchell Trubisky route. This is the first one that kind of got 49ers fans up in arms because it's everything right now that everybody's so caught up with this with Garoppolo and wanting to get that deal done and move on. What were your thoughts when you heard this news that the Steelers were going with Mitchell Trubisky over Jimmy Garoppolo?
Mild disappointment. I mean, clearly from a standpoint of back in, I think, November, this is the team that I predicted would end up with Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's mildly disappointing to be wrong on that particular point. But I had come around, especially while being in Indianapolis for the Combine, I had come around to this idea that Indy was the most logical landing spot for Jimmy Garoppolo. But this is a mild realization of my fears that I have had over this past week, that the 49ers may be holding out for just a little bit more, attempting to play one team against the other, and that all it would take would be a couple of moves to happen, a couple dominoes to fall, and the 49ers would be left holding the bag. I think the first of those dominoes to fall was sort of unrelated, but it took away a landing spot, and that was Tom Brady unretiring. All of a sudden, there was one fewer teams out there looking to fill their quarterback position. And then the Steelers had that realization that they could, in fact, fill that need with a less expensive option that they didn't have to trade for, with potentially greater upside, and still approach that position from the draft. So my fear is, as this market has cooled, eventually it's just the 49ers and no suitors. And at that point, what do they have to do? What are they willing to do?
Yeah, and you're it seems like you're kind of in the same space here a little bit as Chris Royal. Thank you for the donation, Chris. He says, hey, guys, I feel like in terms of Jimmy, the Niners are playing checkers while the rest of the league plays chess. Shake my head. SMH. And I agree. I hear what you're saying, Chris, and I hear what you're saying too, Rob. The one thing that I will say is that the focus throughout this thing, and I put this out earlier, but the focus over the last few days has really gone to the 49ers and Indianapolis. Everybody's so laser focused on those two teams, and I know Pittsburgh was as well. What I would say is that it makes sense Pittsburgh doing this route makes a little bit more sense because we've heard of them being interested in this in some of the draft quarterbacks. They've showed interest. We've heard of interest there with Malik Willis and the things that he brings.
Right.
Matt Corral is a guy who's very similar to Willis in the running and throwing ability. So it makes sense there. So it really seems like what Pittsburgh's doing is they're going with a bridge quarterback. He's going to become Mitchell Trubisky is going to be like what Alex Smith was in San Francisco in 2011, 2012. I think he's going to be the short-term starter while they get a guy up to speed and ready to go. I think Indianapolis is in a little bit different situation here because the Colts are looking for somebody to get them into the playoffs and maybe make a run with them. They felt like they had a playoff team last year that didn't, that fell short, wasn't able to get in. But outside of those two teams, I think you need to realize, kind of look at it from a broader picture. You've got New Orleans, you've got Houston, Philadelphia, Carolina, maybe even Cleveland, Seattle. All those teams are looking for quarterbacks. They're not all going to get one. I would say Seattle is probably going to. It seems the way that things are playing out, Seattle's probably going to stick with Drew Lock, and they're going to draft somebody very similar to what Pittsburgh's doing.
Right.
I would say the Carolina and New Orleans comes down to where does which of those two choices can get a deal done for Deshaun Watson, because I think those are the two spots that are going to be left over for him. And then one of those teams is going to be left holding their purse, and you're going to also have Jameis Winston that could end up in one of those two spots. You have Philadelphia and Houston still. I mean, there's some spots there that are left open for Garoppolo to fall if it's not Indianapolis, although I think a deal is eventually going to get done.
Most definitely. I guess my fear is what have the 49ers done to the trade value of Jimmy Garoppolo and failing to get a deal done to this point? And not that it's necessarily their own fault. Takes two to tango. The 49ers cannot just magically force a trade to happen. There have to be interested parties. But if it comes down to just Indianapolis and they're not bidding against anyone else, it then becomes that waiting game. And I just can't imagine the Niners getting what they want out of it. I do think the hope has to be, and unfortunately, this is probably news 49ers fans don't want to hear, is that there is one more domino that has to fall, and that is Deshaun Watson. And it sounds as if he needs to make physical trips to visit in both New Orleans and Carolina. But the fan bases for those two teams will have been worked up into believing they're getting a starting caliber quarterback. And so that could pressure each of those organizations to get into the Jimmy Garoppolo sweepstakes when they miss out on Deshaun Watson, whichever of those two it is that misses.
Yeah, I hear you there. I agree with you. And the one thing, too, to think about going back to Indy really quick is they were one of the teams that was interested in Deshaun Watson. We found that out. We kind of have assumed that, but we found that out for sure just a short time ago when it was reported that Indianapolis was denied the ability to discuss to have a meeting, with Deshaun Watson. So Indianapolis is either going to be going. They're one of those teams that's still in the mix, and they're either going to be going with probably a lower level backup type of guy who's been around, meaning a Mariota, or I think Winston's maybe a little bit above that, but one of those type of players if they don't want to make a trade for Garoppolo. So
right.
In my opinion, I think they'd be better off with Garoppolo than one of those two players, but we'll see what happens with them.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I think, unfortunately, again, Niner fans have to have a little bit of patience. It's not something I've had today. I have been madly, incessantly refreshing Twitter, sending out tweets about my impatience, but mainly I'm joking. Mainly I realize that the 49ers haven't missed out on anything, that there's still time to deal Garoppolo, that even a hard deadline of the new league year doesn't necessarily force the 49ers to trade Jimmy Garoppolo if they move enough of the money around in some other contracts that exist. I would have a sigh of relief personally if the deal is done by then, but I understand it's not a firm deadline for the 49ers. Yeah,
it's not, but it's definitely something that they're in position to want to have to make a move just because they're $9 million over the salary cap, 9.59 and some change over the salary cap that they've got to get under by 1:00 on Wednesday. So they have less than 48 hours now to do that. There's a number of restructures and things they can do to get there, but the easiest one is obviously going with moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't believe the report that we heard today about what was it? Garoppolo coming back to the 49ers and being here this year, or them holding on to him until training camp. I just don't see that being something that a route that they'd like to take, because that's
Right.
although I don't think it's necessarily something that would blow the team apart or anything like that. I just don't see that being what their path that they want to take here, because that would be make it really tough with them for financially moving forward.
Yeah, that would be really tough to get into the books. You'd have to extend it. You'd have to be creative in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. And then that also, because we're talking about this, that's, part of it is Deshaun Watson. He rejected rejected Seattle. The 49ers aren't going to make a trade with Seattle. I don't see them making a trade with Seattle for Jimmy Garoppolo. I just don't see that happening. The Watson, rejecting Seattle, though, is a plus for the 49ers, because that's one less really good quarterback in the NFC West that we have to worry about.
Yeah, I think everyone, myself included, should smile at this, right? Kick the Seattle Seahawks while they're down, please. They have certainly done that to us many a time over the past decade, and so there's reason to smile in this news of Deshaun Watson rejecting Seattle. It can just be a positive for Niner faithful. Hey, we haven't got a lot of other news today. That was something that I retweeted on my Twitter feed and just took a little bit of solace in. Yeah, the Seahawks are going through some things right now, and the 12th man is having to put up with some of that pain that they haven't suffered through over this last decade. So I don't feel too bad for him.
I don't feel too bad for him either. I think that was a move that I was afraid of, would be Watson going up to Seattle after.
Me too.
Just because of everything, the way things were falling, it just seemed like it was the right. It was trending in that direction. So it's good for the 49ers that it didn't work out that way. And then before we move on to the next topic, I want to bring this one up really quick from Tony. He says, "Thank you for the donation, Tony. Appreciate it." And he says, "Everyone needs to eat some chocolate and watch a movie. This will work out fine." And I agree. One of the things that I felt over throughout the day, and this happens every year with the 49ers, right? They're really quiet on the first day of free agency. Everybody gets worked up. They all get into a frenzy. And then somewhere around day 2 or day 3, the 49ers start bringing back all their own players or making moves, and everybody forgets about how up in arms they were on day 1.
Right.
And, you look at the deal, like with Christian Kirk getting $18.5 million, for the first 2 years out in Jacksonville, and some of these other deals that are going on. And it's really the 49er fans suffering from FOMO today, I think.
Yes. It is. And it's not, the irony of it is it's not fear of missing out on any one particular player, right? I don't think that there are that many 49ers fans. Perhaps they're lamenting the loss of Laken Tomlinson. That would be fair. But other than that, many of these deals coming out are not ones that 49er faithful should be saying to themselves, oh man, we really missed out on that particular player. It's just literally fear of missing out on action. Right? We just want something. We get this hype from the NFL that's like, hey, watch out. You better buckle your freaking seatbelt because 9 a.m., the legal tampering window pops off. You better be ready for it. Niner faithful buckled up, and all of a sudden 9 a.m. rolled around and they didn't get anything, right? So it was that expectation of, oh, we're going to see some sparks fly, and then realizing that those sparks were flying for other teams and not for the Niners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to pull this one up really quick. Barry Baller 18 asks, how long can the 49ers hold Jimmy's contract and let all the free agents sign elsewhere? I'm going to just throw this out here real quick, and I'll let you know. I know the title of this show today was, do the 49ers know that free agency has started? And that's obviously because they haven't made a move. But in terms of the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo's contract causing the 49ers not to be able to sign free agents right now, that's not correct, because they could go out. Remember, none of the deals that we're hearing about today are even taking place. They're all it's all discussion. Nothing becomes official until 1:00 on Wednesday. And so the 49ers could go out there and they can make a move right now. They could agree to terms with anybody that they like. If they want to give $25 million a year to give me a cornerback, I'm blanking Jackson on his name. No, J.C. Jackson already signed.
Signed already. Stephon Gilmore?
Stephon Gilmore. Let's say they want to give Stephon Gilmore $25 million for the next 2 years. And they could agree to that today, and they can announce it today if they chose. Doesn't matter, because it doesn't become effective until Wednesday. So I've seen the tweets about Jimmy Garoppolo's contract affecting what the 49ers are doing right now. Maybe that's the case. I think we're overstating a little bit at this point, because there's moves that are going to help them get underneath the salary cap and they could make any moves that they want right now, knowing that they're going to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo and they're going to have that money down the road. Remember, nothing happens until Tuesday at the earliest.
Yeah, the only way I could see it really impacting them is if the 49ers are starting to have doubts that they're actually going to be able to move Jimmy Garoppolo and they're unwilling to release him, right? If they find themselves in that precarious situation where they're going to need to hold on to Jimmy a little bit beyond the new league year opening up, that could be a situation. Or if a free agent is just wary of the fact that it's an unsettled situation, perhaps that could negatively impact the 49ers' ability. But you would think that any free agent who has any skepticism about the 49ers' intentions with Jimmy Garoppolo, 49ers front office can clearly communicate, hey, we intend to move Jimmy. We will not have that salary on the books. Trey Lance will be the starting quarterback for the 2022 season. You would think they could assuage some of those concerns from any free agents. But to Jack's point, the money is not hindering them right now.
Exactly. They still have the space, and they will have the space. I think when the time comes, it'll be fun to see how this plays out. And let's go look at this one real quick from George. He says, "Thank you, George, for the donation." He says, "What is the issue with us? Why is Jimmy still on the roster? We haven't made any moves in free agency. It's embarrassing as a fan." Would you like to take that one first? Or,
I mean, I think that I get the emotion behind this tweet. I honestly do. But I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about from the San Francisco 49ers perspective. At the end of this, we might have to criticize the way in which they handled the Jimmy Garoppolo if it ends poorly, catastrophe. But I don't think it's going to be a catastrophe, right? During the year, we all said to ourselves, man, what have the 49ers done? They said they were going to keep Jimmy because it made us relevant. And now, middle of the season, we seem to be a middling team. But guess what? It turned around. And at the end of it, we ended up in the NFC Championship game. And so you cannot look at these things midstream and form a completely rational decision. I think you have to wait and see how it plays out. If we move Jimmy Garoppolo to the Indianapolis Colts eventually for a second, I will consider that a huge win for the 49ers. So I think it's too early to judge. And again, there aren't any players that we've missed out on so far where I'm kicking myself, because the one that we've let go, Laken Tomlinson, at $13 million a year, I'm just not paying that if I'm in the 49ers front office.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I again, this goes back to my comment a little bit earlier. I think it's a matter of you're looking at Twitter, you're watching TV, you're doing whatever, and your team's not being talked about, and so you're just kind of left out of the conversation, and you're not hearing the 49ers get be a topic of conversation. Any moves that they're actually making, they keep getting their name thrown out there, but they're not actually making a move. And so I just feel like it's probably a little bit of a missing out on things. The one. Let's just stick on this one because you've mentioned it a couple of times with that Niner guy. He throws out one as well. Thank you for the donation, that Niner guy. He says, sounds like all these teams have exhausted all options before trading for Jimmy. I'm afraid the Colts wait them past the 17th. Perhaps. I mean,
I think if you get down to a situation where there's only one team in the running, that's the fear. But I do think it's worth remembering that there will be a team that misses out on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, and whomever that is between the Panthers or the Saints will be looking for a quarterback. And that could be enough to get the deal done. And, at some point, potentially the Colts feel it's in their best interest to offer a more moderate trade option that just gets this thing done and gets Jimmy onto their roster. So again, I think you have to wait until it all plays out. But I agree that at this point, my fear is the 49ers get stuck holding the bag.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to. You and I have talked about the 49ers and what they're doing in free agency. And I believe in our conversations, we've both been, for the most part, of the belief that the 49ers aren't going to make any big moves, or they might make one or two, but it's not going to be anything substantial, like, $20+ million or in that ballpark. And so that's what we've seen happening so far. I would expect that we're going to see this stuff coming down the road. The 49ers will become more of a player probably around Wednesday. It sounds to me like the only two big players that they're on are Marquez Valdes-Scantling and the cornerback Stephon Gilmore, that we'll talk about both of those a little bit. So I think we're going to see some more play out as we go through this, and it'll be fun to see how that all works out.
Most definitely.
Yeah. So let's just jump over to The next one, and you've mentioned this a couple of different times. This is one of the moves that I think was a problem for the 49ers and could be a problem for the 49ers, I should say. And it was the one big disappointment, I think, for some folks today was Laken Tomlinson leaving the 49ers to join the New York Jets. He's getting roughly $13 million, just a little bit over that per year on his deal to go over there. And I think that was about the number that has been discussed for a while that it would take to retain him. So were you surprised? What are your thoughts on this move?
I was a little surprised. I thought that this was a bit more than Laken was going to get in free agency. It seems to be a fairly robust deal for an interior offensive lineman, but he earned it with his not only his play but his ability to stay on the field. I mean, over the course of his time with the San Francisco 49ers, the man missed two snaps, and those were both shoe malfunctions. I've considered starting that as the name for one of my shows, Shoe Malfunctions, just because it's got such a catchy ring to it. But I mean, to me, I thought the 49ers should be in play for Laken Tomlinson, but I put the cap somewhere around 10.5 million per year. When it got to this level, as sad as I am to see Laken Tomlinson go, and as nervous as I am to have unsettled positions at both of the guard spots, potentially relying on a rookie who wasn't able to produce last year to come in and fill one of them, an unknown at the other, haven't even re-signed Daniel Brunskill, haven't tendered Daniel Brunskill. To me, it is a question mark and one that now becomes a bigger need for the San Francisco 49ers. At the same time, with that price tag, I am okay with the idea that they let him go.
I agree. I am too. I'm right there with you. I think both of us said that if it was over 10 million for Tomlinson, that they were going to let him walk. And so I'm fine with it. I do believe that you're going to see Aaron Banks at left guard as your starter there. And I do believe also that you're going to see probably Daniel Brunskill starting at right guard. I know they didn't tender him. He's a restricted free agent.
Right.
The lowest they could tender him at would be I believe it's 2.5 million as a original round free agent tender, which is about 2.5 million in that ballpark. I don't think that's the number that it would take to re-sign him. So I don't foresee them. That's why I don't think they did any kind of a tender with him. Typically the 49ers haven't tendered the restricted free agents very often. And the few that they've done that with, they've actually ended up trading. I remember them doing that with Matt Breida before they ended up trading him at the draft. So we'll see how this plays out. But I think this offensive line is going to shake out with it having on the left side, you're going to have Trent Williams and Aaron Banks, Alex Mack in the middle, Daniel Brunskill at right guard, unless they pull off a move in free agency. And then the question is going to be right tackle. And if it's not Mike McGlinchey, it'll probably be Jalen Moore, how they end up rounding out that offensive line. That's just my guess right now as it stands based off of what we know.
That would make sense to me. I mean, there'll be some competition, I'm sure. The 49ers have a deep room in the offensive line, right? I mean, there's a considerable drop-off from the starters to the backups, but I think as far as backup offensive linemen go, the 49ers should feel pretty proud of themselves in the room that they've been able to put together. It does give them some options, none that really give you any confidence, but enough that you feel one will emerge. And Aaron Banks certainly seems to be the favorite for that left guard spot.
Yeah, there's no big names there that just jump off and you get excited about.
No.
But it's a group that overall has played okay when they've had a quarterback that was capable of winning games for them. When it was Jimmy Garoppolo, or even in Week 17 with Trey Lance, and it's obviously it's likely to be Trey Lance this year. Everything's pointing to that.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. And then real quick, Michael, thank you for the donation for $4.99, and he also had a really nice tweet. He says, "Hey guys. Love to catch your shows and appreciate your time, dedication, and insight. I think tomorrow is our day. Watson will meet with the Saints and Panthers reps in Houston. By the way, I think Indy will trade for Jimmy Garoppolo."
Ooh, nice. So the reps from those two teams are coming to Houston to meet with Watson. That's good because it eliminates a second trip, having to go from one city to the next.
That's right. He's sitting there and he's saying, "You come to me. You come to me."
It's a home show, according to the new Showtime series on the founding of Uber, which is quite a good series if you haven't caught it yet.
Yeah, and I do think that Watson I think he has a deposition tomorrow as well. I know he still has some legal stuff that's supposed to take place this week, and I think that might be taking place tomorrow. So
All those civil cases.
that's right. Now he's got 20, whatever they are.
Oof.
Kevin, thank you for the donation. He says, Jack and Rob, I came across your channel via Rob. Thank you. See, Rob's a good guy. He helps with all kinds of different things. He'll know me as the Scottish guy from Glasgow. Awesome.
Let's go.
Look, that's awesome. Now we have the international contingent live tonight. He says, Grant says we could be signed at wide receiver, but isn't the D more an issue? I will just start off on this one. There has been some talk about the 49ers being interested in a wide receiver, and that's kind of a nice transition over to the next topic that we've been discussing. The Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a speedy wide receiver that the 49ers are one of the teams that have been reported as interested in signing. What do you think, Rob? Do you think going after a guy like Scantling is more important, or should be taking some precedence here in free agency over the defense?
You know, I can't say that it should take precedence. I think that there are bigger holes for me than wide receiver. However, I'm confident that the 49ers can walk and chew gum at the same time in some respects. So I think that it's important they fill out the wide receiver room. You're looking at a scenario where you only have 3 bodies there with Debo, Brandon Ayuk, and Jawan Jennings. And the Jawan Jennings thing hasn't been solidified, but I count on the fact that it will be, that he'll sign the tender or get a multiple year deal done with the Niners. I do think a speed option is needed. My hope would be to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and have both a speedy wide receiver and a return man. But as far as available speedy wide receivers, I think MVS is sort of top of the list. So I'm okay with the fact that he's being mentioned with the 49ers. I think it'd be a great pairing with Trey Lance coming in to take greater shots down the field. You have to have that speed threat. I don't think Travis Benjamin is that guy, but I wouldn't place it ahead of any of the defensive needs because I do think there are some pressing issues there. If I had to choose between, say, DJ Jones or MVS, I'm going with DJ Jones personally.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. I think the Valdez-Scantling thing is a need for the 49ers, really depending on how they're going to play this out with their receiver group. They need another guy who kind of takes the top off. That was kind of the role that they had last year with a couple of their return guys, right, or special teams players. So we'll see how Travis Benjamin being the top one. So I don't think you're going to see him coming back. So you can maybe see Valdez-Scantling taking that role. The other names that have been thrown out there would be, instead of Valdez-Scantling, are Jakeem Grant, Ray McLeod, and Khalif Raymond. Those 3 names have also all been connected to the 49ers in terms of the wide receiver group. And like Rob said, that also addresses your kick return situation as well, which would make sense for the 49ers.
Yeah, and those 3 that have been mentioned, you would think would come at a considerable discount as compared to MVS, who seems to be coming with a larger price tag attached.
Yeah, I agree. Then I think also when you look at it, if you're looking at a Christian Kirk getting $18.5 million for the first 2 years by Jacksonville, that's a big number that I'm not sure the 49ers would match, especially if they're trying to bring in a higher priced cornerback, which is the other thing that we've heard reported. So we'll see how that one plays out. And then you just kind of coming off of Valdez-Scantling here just for a second, off of the receivers, I should say, is going back to the discussion of Laken Tomlinson. And Corey, thank you for the donation, Corey Hyde. He says, does not signing Tomlinson mean we can afford DJ Jones and Arden Key?
I would say the answer to that in my book is can they? Yes, the 49ers could afford to sign back both DJ Jones and Arden Key. My guess is, much like Laken Tomlinson, they will be interested in both of those players, and I think they probably will have a ceiling on what they're willing to pay both of those players. So I think, as with the case with Laken, whether they come back or not will be less dependent upon the 49ers wanting them back. I think they do want them back. It will be much more dependent upon what another team is willing to pay for them. If DJ Jones becomes a hot commodity or Arden Key gets a lucrative contract offer, I could see them leaping at that. And I don't think the 49ers would match either of those if it got into a bidding war.
Yeah, I don't think that they have anything I don't think these two go together. I don't think not signing Tomlinson means that you're all of
Right.
a sudden bringing DJ Jones and Arden Key back. So from that part of the question, the answer would be no. Um, Here's the interesting piece with DJ Jones, though, is he's a fan favorite amongst the 49ers. Obviously, he was a good run defender with San Francisco. He's a really good defensive tackle. But I think we also need to realize that he only played 51% of the snaps last year. So I don't think we're going to see DJ Jones back unless he's skipped in free agency and he's just kind of left on the market until, maybe mid of next week after that, a couple of weeks, and he hasn't been signed, and then he comes back holding his helmet saying, okay, I'll join you. I don't see DJ Jones as a guy that the 49ers are going to go with, and mainly because you can get those 50 reps, that 51% of the snaps, you can get that from Kevin Givens, you can get that from Javon Kinlaw, you can get that from the group that you already have, and then I think really out of these two names, DJ Jones and Arden Key might be the bigger name that you have to worry about because of the pass rush that he brings from the interior, which is better than what DJ Jones can do in your nickel packages.
Yeah, I mean, to me personally, I go back and forth on this. I can see your argument there that when you get that elite level interior pass rush in a league that is primarily driven by quarterbacks, that you're potentially getting more bang for your buck. I go the other route a little bit in that when a team is able to successfully stymie the opposing offense in running the ball and makes them one-dimensional, even though DJ Jones is only contributing on 50% of the snaps, that impact of taking away the run game and the fact that DJ Jones can offer a pass rush while stopping the run better than most interior linemen, to me, the 50% snap statistic is less meaningful because of those outside factors that come into play. So I'm willing to go a bit higher, but I agree that they're not a package deal. Bringing back one or the other does not impact the other deal getting done. I think the 49ers in an ideal situation would have liked to have had Tomlinson, DJ Jones, and Arden Key all back. I think it just depends on what the bidding wars end up at.
Yeah, and I think the 49ers have known really since the end of the season that Tomlinson wasn't going to be back. I don't think they were surprised at all by the contract that he got out in free agency. It's funny because last year around this time, we were all talking about which free agents, the big 49ers free agents, were the Jets going to scoop up, and they didn't take any. They ended up not getting any of them. I think the biggest name that they ended up with was Tevin Coleman, who at that point, pretty much everybody in around the 49ers we're ready to see him leave anyway.
Yeah, right.
So this is the first one that's actually ended up in New York. I think you might see, and I think you might see New York as another landing spot for DJ Jones as well. So I think they could utilize him in the middle of that defense out there in New York. So we'll see how that all plays out with him. Real quick, Aaron, good to see you. He says from 49ers First Takes, thank you for the donation. He says, the thing that bothers me about the 49ers is this Moneyball approach. It never worked in baseball. I understand the cap situation, but the Rams seem to have no problem regardless of their cap.
I think the question is, who have the 49ers targeted that they've missed out on without overpaying? Because I do think there is a difference between being too conservative and being prudent. And my hope is that the 49ers are being prudent. I think it's too early to tell one way or the other. You could argue that they're being prudent because they passed on some deals that are overpayments. You could also make the counter argument that they are being cheap because they have, in fact, let someone like Laken walk when the intention was to attempt to keep him on the team. But again, until the entirety of the free agent window plays out and you see who the Niners end up with, it's more of an emotional reaction to them not making the moves that we want them to make than it is really them missing out at this point, in my humble opinion.
And I agree with you there. When you think about what the Rams did, the Rams haven't spent big on free agency. All their big guys have been cut through trade, right? They've traded away draft capital for their big guys. I know they had a quarterback that they moved on from as part of the deal to bring in Matthew Stafford to get their quarterback. And that's when you look at the Rams, they got over the hump this year because of Matthew Stafford,
Right.
They fixed their quarterback situation. Their team
They
was
did.
always competitive, but they fixed their quarterback situation. When you think about where the 49ers are, they're trying to fix their quarterback situation. That's the big move that they made last year, trading away all those picks to pick up Trey Lance. And so that's the direction they're taking there. The 49ers don't really have a whole lot of capital that they can trade right now at the moment, because unless they're going to use first round picks from 2020, was it 2024?
2024, yeah.
And beyond now, to do that same kind of thing. So, and I don't know, unless you decide that you want, this goes back to what we were talking about 2 weeks ago now. Do you trade George Kittle? Do you trade what pieces do you have that would bring back a heavy return like what the Rams have done? That would be a guy like George Kittle. That would be a guy like Kyle Juszczyk. Think of those guys on the 49ers that you really like, and one of those guys is going to probably have to go, because there's no middle of the road type of player that can bring back the kind of return of these top players, like a Jalen Ramsey, for example.
Right. And to me, I mean, that would be an interesting thing for the 49ers to pursue midseason, right? You can always have a midseason trade. And if the 49ers find themselves in contention with some of those big teams in the NFC, you could see them trading away some assets, draft picks, whatever, to pull off a midseason trade. Right now in free agency, it's much more of a balancing act around the salary cap. And I understand those people that get frustrated with this idea that the salary cap isn't real, but it truly is. It's just a loose set of parameters. And I think the 49ers have been reasonably successful at working within it. I do have my eye on some of the players still out there. So the jury's still out in my mind as to whether the Niners will be cheap in this free agency period.
Yeah, and I think, we said, we're on there with, in the one thing that I think we both believe, that there's one guy that they're going to splurge on, and it's going to be, is it going to be offense or defense? Where's it going to go? Gary, thank you for the donation. He says Jimmy to Seattle. Pete Carroll would all Shanahan's secrets and use them against the 49ers. That's a really good one. I mean, at the point, we're at the point where, I don't think that this happens, but if the 49ers are intent on trading him, if you're the Seahawks, do you call him up and say, "Hey, we'll give you a second. We have all this draft capital now. We'll take him off your hands." Would you make that deal?
I mean, quite honestly, I think I would. I think I probably would. It depends on what the compensation was coming back. But if it's that or release Jimmy, you might as well get something back, right? I mean, you would then save yourself the $7.5 million injury guarantee that you're going to have to pay if you do release him while he's still recovering from that shoulder injury. If you can get rid of that money, bring back an asset, and sure, have to play against him in Seattle. To me, he's not that type of quarterback that I would have fear about. It wouldn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to trade any player within the division and then have to face them multiple times a year. And if it worked out to where the Seattle Seahawks rose back to glory, I would never forgive myself for being behind the move. I just don't see it impacting the team that way. So I would be okay with it.
Yeah, it's funny because this is one of those moves, right? Do you make this move and then play him against 2 years? Because if you look in the comment section, Barry Baller's like, yeah, I'd love to play against Jimmy Garoppolo 2 times. And then imagine he goes up there and they beat the 49ers. They continue their dominance over the 49ers and everything. And then that just completely blows up in their face. So that's the only reason why I could say the 49ers wouldn't make that move. I think Garoppolo to the Seahawks is very similar to the Colts expressing interest in Deshaun Watson. It's just not going to get off the ground because you don't do that within your division typically, but that would make for a fun article to write right there.
Yes, it would.
Do it.
49ers
John Lynch, get off the golf course. John Lynch, get off the golf course, trade Jimmy to Seattle and give me something to write about, please. And then really quick, just keeping up with the international flair, we had Kevin coming in from Scotland, from Glasgow, and now we have Lucas who comes in from Vienna. So international here on the Jack Hammer, the Hammerhead show. I need to change that. I forgot to move that over. I apologize. We'll get that fixed before.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. Those are high-end graphics that we're working with here on the Hammerhead show.
Well, you're right. It took me I don't know. You don't want to know how long it took me and Jesse to nail this down the other day. But we got it done. So let's kind of keep this back on. We talked about a couple of different things. I don't know if have we discussed Stephon Gilmore coming out west yet?
No, I see that as a potential exciting splash move that the 49ers could still make that would sort of save today or save the start of free agency. To me, this feels like a good fit depending upon the price tag. I was a little bit surprised at the annual average value for JC Jackson. And that deal left me with just a smidge of FOMO. I did have that fear of missing out, but it was only because of expectations. It's not as if the Niners could easily afford to spend $16.5 million per year on a cornerback. But for a cornerback in his prime, 25 years old, coming from the organization that JC Jackson is coming from, to me, that seemed like a reasonable number and one that I would have been thrilled if it were reported the 49ers had landed him at. If Stephon Gilmore can be had for less than that and gives the 49ers additional versatility in the way in which he plays, could be a potentially, better fit for the defense, I would be very excited by that move.
Yeah, I would as well. I think the 49ers, that would be a big move for the 49ers. Stephon Gilmore coming out here. You can take this one back to a couple of weeks ago. Richard Sherman said it was going to be between Seattle and the 49ers as far as his landing spot that he wanted to come out west. Now we're hearing the rumors of it being the Raiders out in Las Vegas, but if the 49ers could get Stephon Gilmore and lock him in and have him for two, maybe it's a shorter term deal, like a 3-year deal where it's really the money's all loaded into the first 2 years, with the third year being the year that kind of an out year, or just something like what they did, even if it's this 3 period. I think that would be a good time frame for him, because what is he, 32 right now?
Yeah, 31, turning 32, I believe.
Yeah, so you're getting him kind of at the end of his career, kind of like what you did with Sherman, and it could be kind of that piece that helps take your defensive backfield over the edge, I think.
Yeah, there seems to be mutual interest there. There seems to be a great fit within the defense. This, to me, is the biggest name to keep an eye on right now.
For sure. And then MGM Productions, thank you for the donation. He comes in with a good one. Thoughts on re-signing Justin Reed? Sneaky signing for us, given Tart is walking. Young, athletic DB for cheap potentially. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there are several intriguing options that remain in the safety market, and I viewed that as one to keep an eye on from the outset. I believe the 49ers can use the Moneyball approach here. I think that the safety market in previous years has shown itself to be soft when you take out, the 1 or 2 game-changing safeties that are out there, and I just wouldn't put Justin Reed in that super elite level of safety. So I believe that there are enough quality choices out there, Tart included, although I don't get the sense that he would want to return to the team from some of the rumors that I have heard. But I believe that this could happen. This could be the type of day 3 signing that the Niners do that adds significant value to the team, but sort of flies under the radar in that respect.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Justin Reed from everything that I've seen of him. He brings a level of athleticism to the position that I think is on par with what you've seen from Jaquiski Tart. The difference being, though, that Justin Reed is on the field on a regular basis. He doesn't miss the games like Jaquiski Tart does. So if you can get him for, I've seen the numbers thrown out in like the $7 million range per year or something like that for Reed. If that's the number that you can get him for, I would say absolutely you go out and you get Justin Reed, because he's a player with his skill set that would match really well with the 49ers and what they're trying to do. So it'll be interesting to see that. And real quick, while we're talking about safeties, Aaron throws out really quick, and on Twitter, this just popped up, is that it looks like the Honey Badger don't care what you have to give him. He's going to the Raiders. And that's
to the Raiders.
That's the information that just kind of, I think it just flew up on Twitter recently, was that the Raiders are closing in on signing free agent safety Tyrann Mathieu to a 2-year deal. The details will be coming out more soon. The full details. So definitely a move there that I think some 49er fans were hoping would be to the 49ers, but again, sticking on Stephon Gilmore, I think that would be a good move for the 49ers for sure.
Yeah, I do as well. And I never really saw it as a likely scenario where the 49ers made a splash at safety, unless it was going to be through the draft in that regard. I did see the more likely scenario. If you were going to spend as the 49ers, the two positions I could have seen it happening, could still see it happening, would be edge rusher or cornerback. Those seem like the two most likely scenarios outside of spending some big dollars to bring back some of their own guys.
Correct. And then that brings us to another one of the 49ers' own guys, and that would be Raheem Mostert. This morning, one of the early signings was Chase Edmonds to the Miami Dolphins. A lot of folks have been thinking that Mostert's going to be one of those guys that follows Mike McDaniel out to Miami. Do you think that there might be some impact on Raheem Mostert with the Dolphins going out and bringing in Chase Edmonds?
I do. First and foremost, I feel like the Chase Edmonds signing is an intriguing one. And I believe that could be a smashing fit within Mike McDaniel's system there. I'll have my eye on Chase Edmonds from a fantasy football perspective, because there could be some serious production there. I don't know that it impacts Mostert a great deal, but it most definitely impacts him. The way in which I would see it most likely impacting him is in the potential salary that he might take home. I still think that you could see a situation where Miami, even in attempting to limit what they spend on Mostert so that they're not spending too much within their running back room, may still be willing to outspend the San Francisco 49ers. And the other aspect of it to consider in my mind is Mostert's preference. So, he has eaten some crow in the time that he's been with the San Francisco 49ers. He wanted a bigger paycheck. He got a moderately altered deal, but certainly not what he was looking for. Then comes back, gets the injury, and has that unfortunate circumstance play out on Twitter with the vitriol aimed at he and his wife. And so that's my biggest question mark, is does any of that linger for Raheem Mostert? If he's looking at two equal deals between Miami and the San Francisco 49ers, are the Niners the warm spot in his heart and he wants to return? Or is he more inclined to go fresh start with Miami? So that's the biggest question mark for me on this deal.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the 49ers would have to offer a little bit more to even make it equal, right? Because of the difference in the state taxes between Florida and California. So
right.
That could play a part in it as well. Mostert's one of those guys who does some things really well that would fit good with the 49ers. And it'll be, I have a hard time seeing him coming back, because I just think that there's somebody that's going to offer him more than what the 49ers are going to offer. And then he's going to take it and try to maximize. And that's why we saw the report come out over the weekend from his agent talking about, using a medical thing, that he's in the best shape of his life. He's
right.
Fully healthy. He's all these things. That all just led you to believe that Mostert won't be back with the 49ers because they're looking to get the most money possible. And San Francisco is probably not going to be it.
Yep. Tend to agree.
Yeah. And then real quick too, while we were talking about cornerbacks a little bit, so we got off of that topic, but a couple of the other names to think about there, if it's not Stephon Gilmore, you have Casey Hayward. He's a younger cornerback that I know Jordan Elliott is very high on him with his abilities. Steven Nelson is a name I've seen thrown out. Charvarius Ward is another cornerback that the 49ers have been linked to. Having interest in would be Charvarius Ward. And then obviously there's my favorite, which is DJ Reed. DJ Reed for me is the guy, if I'm going to spend big money on the corners, that's where I would rather go. I'd rather see DJ Reed. But if they decide to go with Stephon Gilmore over any of those other names, I wouldn't be angry at it, because I think he's still playing at a high level.
I agree. Just as a matter of inquiry, if you might expand on why would you view DJ Reed as a better option than Stephon Gilmore? What is it about DJ Reed that attracts you to him, other than obviously he's a younger candidate than Stephon Gilmore there?
Well, the biggest thing with Reed in particular is that he has the ability to play both inside and outside. So right. he can play that outside role, and he's effective at it. He's at his best playing on the side opposite of where Emmanuel Moseley is. Emmanuel Moseley was primarily on the right side of the 49ers defense this year. Reed was at his best in Seattle when he was on the left side. So that makes it an easy solution there for him to fit on the left side. And then when he slides down into the slot, they have a cornerback in Ambry Thomas, who they were comfortable with last year, that can come in and just play that outside corner role on that same side. It just makes it, that's kind of killing two birds with one stone here. And the 49ers spend so much time in a nickel anyway in the NFL that you do. I just feel like Reed would fit really well within the 49ers scheme overall.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think I would be okay with either one of those. And to me, the biggest advantage being the youth with DJ Reed. But to the logic you just laid out to there, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. That's the reason that I like him so much. We'll see what happens and what direction they take. I'm surprised a little bit by the numbers that we've seen from the cornerback group, because I was expecting to see them be up in the $20 million range as well. And we haven't seen anybody come close to that yet.
No.
Real quick, Charles, thank you for the donation. He says, thoughts on Cordero Patterson, kick returns, wide receiver. What do you think, Rob?
I mean, I think it would be a good fit. To me, it would need to fall into the value signing realm. To me, this is a nice to have, not a need to have. It would be great to have someone that is a returner. I like the idea that he would also take away potentially some of the carries from Deebo Samuel in that wide back role. But I also feel there are other ways to address the kick returner position while killing two birds with one stone, much like you would in this Cordero Patterson signing. To me, this would just be a matter of how inexpensive will he be? And my thought is not inexpensive at all. My thought is after the season that Deebo Samuel just put up, there will be other teams out there attempting to replicate that. And Cordero, as far as free agents, appears to be the closest thing to a Deebo clone out there.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why you would like to have Cordero Patterson, right? Is because of that ability to do all those other things. To me, I don't think this is. I know the 49ers were interested in this last year. I don't know if they come back to that now, given the way that their roster is put together. They might, but I don't. I wouldn't be upset about it. I just don't think that that's the direction that they're going to take. We'll see how it plays out. That's my opinion. I just don't think they're going to go that route. But I wouldn't be angry at it. And then real quick, Carson, thank you for the donation. He says, I'm done with John Lynch. Bad drafter, talks trash about our players on to KNBR. ... Chandler Jones, thoughts?
I mean, first and foremost, yeah, to hell with that guy, that John Lynch guy. Get him out of here. What a bum. No, I still like John Lynch. I still respect him. I still appreciate what he's done. Does he have a perfect track record? Absolutely not. But nobody does in the NFL. I think we just get accustomed to being hypercritical about our own GM, our own head coach, our own players, and we forget that throughout the NFL, everybody's flawed and nobody is perfect. And I think that would be the case in my assessment of Chandler Jones. I see immense value for the 49ers in pursuing a bookend edge rusher to Nick Bosa. Chandler Jones could be that guy. He does come with some risk, and you have to wonder what the price tag is going to be. So in theory, I really like the idea of adding Chandler Jones. I also really like the depth pieces that the 49ers have there. I'm excited to see what Charles Omenihu is able to do with a full season. As he has said in his own words, just wait a full season within Chris Kosaric's system. And Samson Ebukam, as he continues to evolve from the role that he had with the Rams into what he was doing with us last year. So to me, yes, I'd be excited to bring in Chandler Jones, but it would be highly dependent on what he's asking and what that contract looks like.
Yeah, I agree with you. Chandler Jones is, when you're looking at these edge rushers, I've seen a lot of different names be thrown out. The Chandler Jones one kind of popped up a little bit towards the end of last week. And if the 49ers could get Chandler Jones on an affordable deal, I think it's a great move for them, because Jones is still a guy, even though he's on, getting a little bit longer in the tooth, he's still, I think in 6 of the last 7 years has put up over 10 sacks per year. The one year he didn't was the year that he was injured back in 2020. He missed a lot of time, and so that year he didn't. But other than that, he's been a double-digit sack guy. So if you could bring a guy like Chandler Jones in for a modest deal, then you go ahead and do it. And maybe that's what the 49ers are going to do. Maybe they're going to go with a Chandler Jones, and if they're not able to hit on one of these cornerbacks, because that's typically the way that they've built this team, is to through the pass rush and letting the corners and the safeties be a little bit more on the cheaper side, while they focus their money on the pass rush and defensive linemen. So as far as Chandler Jones, I like that one. In terms of what you're saying about Lynch, bad drafter, talks trash to our player, about players on KNBR. when you look at the draft with the 49ers, I don't think it's quite as bad as we've thought it's been. The first couple years they struggled in 17, a little bit in 18. Although I'd say I think McGlinchey's been better overall than people give it credit for. I think the last couple of years you got to go back. Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. They've done really well in the draft over the last. Who was it in 2021? I think they were decent with their first round pick here in 2021, weren't they?
Yeah, we shall see. I mean, you would think that that's going to work out well. It seems to be that we've landed our future starting quarterback.
Yeah, you'd think so. So we'll see how that all plays out. And then Paul brings up something that I've pointed out quite a bit. Ebicom had 5.5 sacks in his last 8 games. Once he started playing at Skip on high-priced edge. We're speaking the same language because I've been saying this for a while. I feel like Samson Ebicom, once he moved into the starting role, was really good. And I think that people, he was really the only free agent the 49ers spent money on early on when it came to the defensive side of the ball and as a rusher in particular. So he didn't jump off the screen the first few weeks of the season, but once he moved into that starting role, he was really good.
Yeah, I agree. I also see, considerable folks talking about drafting an edge at 61. That's where I was for a long time. As I went to the combine and started to get my eyes set on a couple of those edge rushers, they quickly climbed past 61. So if we don't get a deal done for Jimmy Garoppolo that brings back a pick in this year's draft, I just have a hard time seeing us getting high quality edge rusher at 61, but you never know how that board is going to fall out.
Yeah, it's sure there's a number of them. Talking to those of you that were out at the combine, there was quite a number of names, that I heard from Jordan last week and Brad in terms of the pass rushers and things like that. So I think it's going to be, I'm looking forward to it. The 49ers are going to get busy here at some point. They're going to wake up and realize that free agency has started probably around Wednesday at 12:55. They're going to be like, they're going to be, be realistic here for a minute. If we got everybody that's on this stream and over in the comment section, the 400 and plus, however many people are watching this, how many of you woke up on Monday morning and realized over the weekend you had a quiz, a paper you had to write? You show up, wake up that morning, you're like, oh man, I forgot to do my homework. And then you sit down and you do your homework, you turn it in, you get a good grade, you pass the class, and everybody forgets about the way it started, right? That's where the 49ers are right now. So let's hope that John Lynch wakes up at some point here and realizes, oh, he's got homework he's got to get done. And then make the signings.
Yes, indeed.
But beyond that, I think we pretty much covered it for today. We'll see where this goes. As I keep saying over the week, it's going to be fun. It's Monday. 49er fans are already losing their minds. We got a long ways to go before the season starts. I think we still have, what are we at? We're middle March. So I think we've got about 6 months to go before the season starts. 5.
We got a long way to go. So
you need to remember there was a tweet that I saw earlier as we were talking. I was looking through Twitter to refresh Twitter, like Rob said. I'll trying to make sure I don't miss any information for you. And it's pretty interesting because it goes into the signings that the 49ers made just last year. And if you remember last year, the 49ers people felt really good about what they did in free agency. And the 49ers only brought in, I think, 3 guys really that stuck with them. Everybody else were guys that they brought back, and so they're in a position where they haven't made any big names, big splashy moves yet, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. So let's give it a little bit of time, have a little bit of, as the great singer for Axl Rose once said, we just need a little patience. We can all just use a little patience. So
well said, Jack. Well said.
I'm not even going to try to sing it because I can't sing it. If we were going to sing something, I'd probably go back to Smash Mouth, who believes that the 49ers are going to be keeping Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that interaction between Smash Mouth and Grant.
And I really like it. Like I responded back and I told Grant, if he wouldn't be the first guy to tell Smash Mouth that they're not the sharpest tool in the shed.
I love that.
Real quick, Carson Taylor, thank you for the donation. He says, realistic, Jimmy Garoppolo for a 2nd and 3rd for Marshawn Lattimore.
Jimmy G, a 2nd and a 3rd for Marshawn Lattimore. I mean, It's not out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, I would think that Marshawn Lattimore, though, is probably worth 2 first-rounders, and that doesn't equate to me as 2 first-rounders. So I would say probably not realistic. I would say if you put out Jimmy G a first and a second, now you're probably in the right range, but the Niners obviously don't have a first until 2024.
Yeah, I don't foresee that being a move that they would New Orleans would want to do. Marshawn Lattimore is one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL. Jimmy Garoppolo, middle of the road quarterback that can win a bunch of games for you, and he'd probably help them win. I don't think the Saints are in a position where they want to get rid of one of their best corners and bring in Garoppolo. You're helping one area, but crippling the other one a little bit too much there. So I don't believe that would happen. So that's it. That's it for today, as far as, unless somebody else wants to throw out some more money at me. But otherwise, I want to say thank you to everybody in the comment section. We had a really good group. The one thing that we didn't get to today is that the 49ers are going to be doing some contract restructuring. So keep an eye out for that probably over the next 2 days, because they're going to have to get there by Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So either Garoppolo is going to be gone by that point, or they're going to see some news on restructuring. So keep it locked in here on my channel over at the Sneakerheads show over there with Rob, because he's got a great stuff going on. And I know you've got a show coming up here at 5:30, right?
I'll be going live at 5:30. This is going to be an emotional processing type of a show. So I want all of you that are here that have some emotion you need to vent, that have some things you need to process. I want to see you over on my channel in a little bit, because we will be going through it. We will be exchanging a dialogue back and forth. I want to feel your frustration. I got a little bit of my own, and we will continue this dialogue.
That's right. There you go. So make sure you get yourself over to Rob's channel. Check it out. If you're not already subscribed over there, which probably most of you are, make sure you do. And if you could also, for me, hit that like button today. Make sure you continue to comment on the production. And what else do I want you guys to do? Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the little bell notification. Get yourself over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. All those fun things. Again, thank you all for joining. Rob, thank you for coming on Monday. It's always fun to talk to you.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday. Get over to Rob's channel and don't worry too much. Just have a little patience.